Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Volume 3, Section 6. Buddhistic India. Lecture delivered at the Shakespeare Club, Pasadena, California on February 2nd, 1900. Buddhistic India is our subject tonight. Almost all of you perhaps have read Edwin Android poem on the life of Buddha, and some of you perhaps have gone into the subject with more scholarly interest as in English, French, German. There is a quite lot of Buddhistic literature. Buddhism itself is the most interesting of the subject, for it is the first historical outburst of a world religion. There have been a great religion before Buddhism arose in India and elsewhere, but more or less they are confined within their own races. The ancient Hindus and ancient Jews or ancient Persians, every one of them had a great religion, but these religions were more or less racial. With Buddhism first began that peculiar phenomena of religion boldly starting out to conquer the world. Apart from its doctrine and the truths it taught and the message it had to give, we stand face to face with one of the tremendous cataclysm of the world. Within the few centuries of its birth, the barefooted, shaven-headed missionaries of Buddha had spread over all all the then known civilized world, and they penetrated even further from the Lapland on the one side of the Philippine island on the other. They had spread widely within a few centuries of the Buddha's birth, and in India itself, the religion of Buddha had at one time nearly swallowed up two-thirds of the population. The whole of India was never Buddhistic. It stood outside. Buddhism had same fate as Christianity had with the Jewish. The majority of the Jewish stood aloft. So the old Indian religion lived on, but the comparison stops here. Christianity, though it could not get within its fold all the Jewish race, itself took the country where the old religion existed, the religion of the Jews, and that was conquered by the Christianity in very short time, and the old religion was despaired. And so the religion of the Jews lives a sporadic life in different parts of the world. But in India, this gigantic child was absorbed in a long run and by mother that gave it birth. And today, name of Buddha is almost unknown all over India. You know more about Buddhism than 99% of the Indians. At best, they of India only know the name. Oh, he was a great prophet, a great incarnation of God, and there it ends. The island of Ceylon remains to Buddha, and in some parts of the Himalayan country, there are some Buddhists yet. Beyond that, there are none. But Buddhism has spread over all the rest of Asia. Still, it has a large number of followers of any religion, and it has indirectly modified the teaching of all other religions. A good deal of Buddhism entered into Asia Minor, and it was constant fight at one time whether the Buddhists would prevail or the later sect of Christians. The Gnostic and the other sect of the early Christians were more or less Buddhistic in their tendencies, and all these got fused up in that wonderful city of Alexandria, and out of the fusion under the Roman law came Christianity. Buddhism, in its political and social aspect, is even more interesting than its doctrine and dogmas, and has the first outburst of the tremendous world conquering the power of religion. It is very interesting also. I am mostly interested in the lecture in India as it was or as it has been affected by Buddhism, and to understand Buddhism and its rise a bit we have to get a few ideas about India as it existed when this great prophet was born. There was already in India a vast religion with and organized scriptures, the Vedas, and these Vedas existed as a mass of literature and not the books. Just as you find the Old Testament, the Bible, now the Bible is the mass of the literature of different ages. Different persons are the writers and so on. It is the collection. Now the Vedas are a vast collection. I do not know whether it is if the texts were all found. Nobody has found all the text. Nobody, even in India, has been all the books. If all the books were known, this room would contain them. It is huge mass of literature, carried down from generations to generation for God, who gave the scriptures. And the idea about the scriptures in India became tremendously orthodox. You complain of your orthodoxies in the book worship. If you get a Hindu idea, where will you be? The Hindus think the Vedas are the direct knowledge of God, that God has created the whole universe in and through the Vedas, and that the whole universe exists because it is the Vedas. The cow exists outside because the word cow is in the Vedas. Man exists outside because the word is in the Vedas. Here you see beginning of that theory which later on Christians developed and expressed in the text. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. It is the old ancient theory of India. Upon that is based the whole idea of the scriptures and the mind, every word and mind, every word is the power of God. The word is only the external manifestation on the material plane. So all these manifestations is just the manifestation on the material plane. And the word is the Veda and the Sanskrit is the language of God. God spoke once. He spoke in Sanskrit and that is a divine language. Every other language they consider is no more than the braying of animal, and to denote that they call every other nation that does not speak Sanskrit mliches. The same word has barbarians of the Greeks. They are braying, not talking, and Sanskrit is a divine language. Now, the Vedas were not written by anybody, they were entirely existent with God. God is infinite, so is knowledge, and through this knowledge is created the world. Their idea of ethic is that a thing is good because the law says so. Everything is bound by that book. Nothing can go beyond that because the knowledge of God you cannot get beyond that. That is Indians' orthodoxy. In the later part of Vedas, you see the highest, the spiritual. In the early portion, there is a crude part. You quote a passage from the Vedas. That is not good. You say, why? There is a positive evil injunction. The same as you see in the Old Testament. There are numbers of things in all old books, curious ideas which we would not like in our present days. You say this doctrine is not at all good. Why? It shocks my ethics. How did you get your idea? Merely by your own thoughts. Get out. If it is ordained by God, what right you have to question? When Vedas say, do not do this, do not do this is immoral, and so on. No more have you the right to question at all, and that is the difficulty. If you tell a Hindu, but our Bible does not say so, he will reply, oh, your Bible, it is a baby of the history. What other Bible could there be except the Vedas? What other book could be there be? All the knowledge is in God. Do you mean to say that he teaches by two or more Bibles? His knowledge came out in Vedas. Do you mean to say that he committed mistake then? For afterward, he wanted to do something better and taught another Bible to another nation. You cannot bring another book that is as old as Vedas. Everything else is everything else. It was all copied after that. They would not listen to you. And the Christian brings the Bible. They say, that is fraud. God only speaks once because he never makes mistakes. Now just think of that. The orthodoxy is terrible. And if you ask a Hindu that he is to reform his society and do this and that, he says, is it in the books? If it is not, I do not care to change. You wait. In 500 years more, you will find this is good. If you say to him, this society This social institution that you have is not right. He says, how do you know that? Then he says, our social institute is a matter, uh, in this matter are better. Wait 500 years and your institution will die. The test is to survival of the fittest. You live, but there is not one community in the world which lives 500 years together. Look here, we have been standing all the time. That is what they would say. Terrible orthodox. And thank God I have crossed that ocean. This was the Orthodox in India. What else was there? Everything was divided. The whole society as it is today, though in a much more rigorous form then, divided into caste. There is another thing to learn. There is a tendency to make caste just now going on here in the West. And I myself, I am a renegade. I have broken everything. I do not believe in caste individually. It has very good things in it. For myself, Lord help me, I would not have any caste if He helps me. You understand what I mean by caste, and you are all trying to make it very fast. It is a hereditary trait for the Hindus. The Hindu said in the olden times that life must be made easier and smoother, and what makes everything alive? Competition. Hereditary trait kills. You are a carpenter. Very good. Your son can be only the carpenter. What are you? A blacksmith. Blacksmith becomes a caste. Your children will become blacksmith. We do not allow anybody else to come into the trade. So you will be quiet and remain there. You are a military man, a fighter. Make a caste. You are a priest. Make a caste. The priesthood is hereditary, and so on. Rigid high power that has a great side, and that side is that it really rejects competitions. It is that which has made the nation live while other nations have dead that caste. But there is a great evil. It checks individuality. I will have to be a carpenter because I am born a carpenter, but I do not like it. That is in the book, and that was before Buddha and was born. I am talking to you of India. I am talking to you of India as it was before Buddha, and you are trying today what you call socialism. Good thing will come, but it is in the long run you will be a blink upon the race. Freedom is the watchword. Be free. A free body, a free mind, and a free soul. That is what I have felt all my life. I would rather be doing evil freely than be doing good under bondage. Well, these things that they are crying for now in the West, they have done ages before there. Land has been nationalized by thousands, all these things. There is blame upon this hidebound caste. The Indian the Indian people are intensely socialistic intensely socialistic, but beyond that there is a wealth of individualism. They are a tremendous individualistic, that is to say, after laying down all these minute regulations, they have regulated how you should eat, drink, sleep, die. Everything is regulated there. From early morning to when you go to bed and sleep, you are following regulations and laws. Laws and laws. Do you wonder that a nation should live under that? Law is death. The more of the law in the country, the worse for the country. But to be an individual, we go to the mountains where there is no law, no government. The more of the law you make, the more of police and socialism, the more of blackguards there are. Now these tremendous regulations of laws there. As soon as a child is born, he knows that he is born a slave or to his caste first, slave to his nation next, slave and slave. Every action, his drinking and his eating, he must eat under the regular method. This prayer with the first morsel, this prayer with the second, that prayer with the third, and that prayer when he drinks water. Just think of that. Thus, from day to day, it goes on and on. But they were thinkers. They knew that this would not lead to real greatness, so they left a way out for them all. After all, they found out that all these regulations are only for the world and the life of the world. As soon as you do not want money and you do not want children, no business for this world, you can go out entirely free. Those that go out, thus were called sannyasins, people who have given up. They never organize themselves, nor do they now. They are free order of men and women who refuse to marry, who refuse to possess property, and they have no law. Not even the Vedas bind them. They stand on the top of the Vedas. They are at the other pole from our social institutions. They are beyond caste. They have grown beyond. They are too big to be bound by these little regulations and things. Only two things are necessary for them. They must not possess property and they must not marry. If you marry, settle down, or possess his property, immediately the regulations will be upon you. But if you do not do either of these two, you are free. They were the living gods of the races, and 99% of our great men and women were to be found among them. In every country, real greatness of the soul means extraordinary individuality, and that individuality you cannot get in the society. It feeds and fumes and wants to burst the society. If society want to keep it down, that soul want to burst society into pieces, and they made an easy channel. They say, well, once you get out of the society, then only worship you from the distance. So there were the tremendous individualistic men and women, and they are highest persons in all society. If fellow, one of those yellow clad shaven head comes, the prince even dares not remain seated. In his presence he must stand. The next half, one of the sannyasin might be at the door of one of the cottage of the poorest subject, and glad to get only the piece of bread, and he has to mixed with all grades. Now he sleeps with the poor man in his cottage. Tomorrow he sleeps on a beautiful bed of the king. One day he dines in a golden plate in king's palace. The next day he has not any food, and sleep under the tree. Society looks upon these men with great respect, and some of them, just to show their individuality, will try to shock the public ideas. But the people are never shocked so long as they keep to these principles, perfectly pure and no property. These men, being very individualistic, they are always trying new theories and plans, visiting in every country. They must think something new. They cannot run in the old groves. Others are all trying to make us run in the old groves, forcing us all to think alike. But human nature is greater than any human foolishness. Our greatness is greater than our weakness. The good things are stronger than the evil things. Supposing they succeed in making us all think in the same group, there would be no more thought to think. We would die. Here was a society which had almost no vitality. Here was a society which had almost no vitality, its members pressed down by iron chain of law. They were forced to help each other. There one was under regulations that were tremendous. Regulations even how to breathe, how to wash face and hands, how to bath, how to brush the teeth, and so on, to the movement of life. And beyond these regulations was a wonderful individualism of the sannyasin. There he was, and every day a new sect was rising among these strong individualistic men and women. The ancient Sanskrit book tells about their standout of one woman who was quite quaint, queer old woman on the ancient times. She always had some new things, something she was criticized, but always people were afraid of her. obeying her quietly. So there were those great men and women of the olden times. And within the society, so oppressed by regulations, the power was in the hands of the priest. In the social scale, the highest caste is that of the priest, and that being a business. I do not know any other word. That is why I use the word priest. It is not in the same sense as in this country, because our priest is not a man that teaches religion or philosophy. The business of the priest is to perform all these minute details of regulations which have been laid down. The priest is the man who helps in this regulation. He marries you to your funeral. He comes to pray. So, at all the ceremonies performed upon a man or a woman, the priest must be there. In the society, the ideal is marriage. Everyone must marry. It is the rule. Without marriage, man is not able to perform any religious ceremonies. He is only half a man. He is not the competent of the officiate. Even the priest himself cannot officiate as priest except he marries. Half a man is unfit within the society. Now, the power of the priest increased tremendously. The great policy of our national lawgivers was to give the priest his honor. They also had the same socialistic plan you are just ready to try. That checked of them from the getting money. What was the motive? Social honor. Mind you, the priest in all country is the highest in the social scale. So much so in India that the poorest Brahmin is greater than the greatest king in the country by birth. He is the noble man of India. But the law does not allow him ever to become rich. The law grinds him down to poverty. Only it gives him the honor. He cannot do a thousand things, and the higher in the caste in the social scale, the more restricted are its enjoyments. The higher the caste, the less number of kinds of food the man can eat. The less amount of food that man can make that man may eat, and less the number of occupation he can get engaged in. To you, his life would be only a perpetual train of hardship, nothing more than that. It is a perpetual discipline in eating, drinking, and everything, and all the penalties which are required from the lowest caste are required from the higher 10 times more. The lowest man tells a lie. His fine in $1. A Brahmin he must pay says $100 for he knows better. But this was a grand organization to start with. Later on, the time came when this priest began to get all the powers in their hands. And at last, they forgot the secret of their poverty. They were men whom society fed and clothed so that they might simply learn and teach and drink and think. Instead of that, they began to spread out their hands to clutch at the riches of the society. Became money grabbers, to use your word, and forget all these things. Then there was a second caste, the kindly caste, the military. Actual power was in their hands. Not only so, they have proceeded all of our great thinkers and not the Brahmins. It is curious. All our great prophets, almost without one exception, belongs to the kindly caste. The great man Krishna was also that of that caste. Rama, he also, and all our great philosophers, almost all on the throne. Thence came all the great philosophers of renunciation. From the throne came the voice that always cried, Renounce. These military people were their kings, and they also were the philosophers. They were the speaker in the Upanishad. In their brains and their thoughts, they were greater than the priest, and they were more powerful. They were the kings, and at the priest got all the power and tried to tyrannize over them. And so that was going on political competition between the two castes, priest and the kings. Another phenomena is there. Those of you that have been to hear the first lecture already know that in India there are two great races. One is called Aryan, the other the non-Aryan. It is Aryan race that has the three castes, but the whole of the rest are dubbed with the one name, Shudras, no caste. They are not Aryans at all. Many people came from outside of India and they found the Shudras there, the aborigines of the country. However, it may be, these vast masses of non Aryan people are the mixed people among them. They gradually became civilized and they began to scheme for same rights as the Aryans. They wanted to enter their schools and their colleges and they wanted to make the sacred trade of the Aryan. They wanted to perform the certain ceremony as the Aryan and wanted to have equal rights in the religion and politics like the Aryans. And the Brahmin priest, he was the great antagonist of such claims. You see, it is the nature of the priest in every country. They are the most conservative people naturally. So long as it is trade, it must be. It is to their interest to be conservation. So this tide of murmur outside the Aryan Pale, the priests were trying to check with all their might within the Aryan Pale. There was also a tremendous religious ferment, and it was mostly led by this military caste. There was already the sect of Jains, who are a conservative force in India even today. It is a very ancient sect. They declare against the validity. They declare against the validity of the scriptures of Hindus, the Vedas. They wrote some books themselves, and they said, "Our books are only original books, the only original Vedas, and the Vedas that now are going on under the name they have been written by the Brahmins of dupe of people." And they also led the same plan. You see, it is difficult for you to meet the argument of the Hindus about the scriptures. They also claim that the world has been created through those books and they were written in the popular language. The Sanskrit even then had ceased to be spoken language. It had just the same relation to the spoken languages as Latin has to the modern Italian. Now they wrote all their books in Pali, and when a Brahmin said, Why your books are in Pali? They said Sanskrit is the language of the dead. In their methods and manners, they were different. For you see, these Hindu scriptures, the Vedas, are the vast mass of accumulation, some of them crude, while you come to where religion is taught, only the spiritual. Now that was the portion of the Vedas which this sect all claim to preach. Then there are three steps in the ancient Vedas. First, work. Second, worship. Third, knowledge. Work, worship, knowledge. When the man purifies himself by work and worship, then God is within that man. Has realized he is already there, and he only can have seen him because he only can have seen him because the mind has become pure. Now the mind can become pure by work and worship. That is all. Salvation is already there. We don't know it. Therefore, work, worship, and knowledge are the three steps. By work, this mean doing good to others. That has, of course, something in it, but mostly has to the Brahmin. Work means to perform these elaborate ceremonies, killing of cow, killing of bull, killing of goat, and all sort of animal that are taken fresh and thrown into the fire and so on. Now declares the Jains that it is no work at all because injuring others can never be any good work. And they said this is the proof that your Vedas are false Vedas manufactured by the priest, because you do not mean to say that any good book will order us to kill animals and doing these things. You do not believe it. So all this killing of animal and other things that you see in the Vedas, they have been written by the Brahmin because they alone are benefited. It is the priest only who pockets the money and goes home. So therefore it is all prescribed. It was one of their doctrine that there cannot be any God. These priests have invented God, that people may believe in God and pay them money. All nonsense. There is no God. There is nature and there are soul, and that is all. Souls have got entangled into this life and got around them the clothing of man you call a body. Now do good work. But from that naturally came the doctrine that everything that is matter is veil. They are the first teachers of asceticism. If the body is the result of impurity, why therefore the body is veil? If the man stands on one leg for some time, all right, it is punishment. If the head comes up, bump against a wall, rejoice it, a very good punishment. Some of great founders of the Franciscan order, one of them Saint Francis, were going to a certain place to meet somebody. Saint Francis had one of his companions with him. He began to talk as to whether the person would receive them or not, and this man suggested that possibility he would reject them. Said Saint Francis, that is not enough, brother. But if when we go and knock at the door, the man comes and drives us away, that is not enough. But if he orders us to be bound and gives us a thorough whipping, even that is not enough. And then if he binds us hand and foot and whips us under until we bleed at every pore, throws us outside in the snow, that would be enough. This same ascetic idea prevailed at that time. These Jains were first great ascetics, but they did some great work. Don't injure any, and do good to all that you can, and that is all morality and ethics. That is all the work there is, and the rest is all nonsense. Brahmin created that, throw it all away. And then they went to work and elaborate this one principle all through. And it is most wonderful idea how all that we call ethics they simply bring out from that one great principle of non-injury and doing good. This sect was at last 500 years old. Buddha and he was 550 years before Christ. Now, the whole of the animal creation they divide into five sects. The lowest have only one organ, that of touch. The higher next one has touch and taste. Next one has touch, taste, hearing. Next one has touch, taste, hearing, and sight. And the fifth and the next has all five sense organs. The first two, the one organ and the two organ, are invisible to the naked eyes, and they are everywhere in water. A terrible thing, killing this low form of life. This bacteriology has come into existence in modern world only in the last 20 years, and theretofore nobody knew anything about it. They said the lowest animal are only one organ, touch, nothing else. The next greater were also invisible, and they all knew that if you boiled water, these animals were all killed. So this monk, if they died of thirst, they would never kill this animal by drinking water. But if a monk stands at your door and you give him a little boiled water, the sin is on you of killing the animals, and he will get the benefit. They carry this idea of ludicrous extremes. For instance, in rubbing the body, if he baths, he will have to kill number of animalcules, so he never baths. He gets killed himself. He says that it is all right. Life has no care for him. He will get killed and save the lives.